Hey guys, it's Tori, and today I am starting off my vlog for Persuasion. This is the last full-length Jane Austen novel I have yet to read. I am buddy reading it with Katya, so apparently all my buddy reads with Katya. I'm just going to be vlogging my experience because she just happens to read the books with me that I want to vlog. Last one I did was Adam Bede, as far as last book I read with her, and I also vlogged that one, so I will link that down below if you're curious about it. But anyway, going to be reading Persuasion, vlogging my thoughts, and I'm really excited. I've heard great things about this. I've heard a lot of people say it's their favorite Jane Austen, so I'm very curious to see how I end up feeling about it, so I will keep you updated as I go through each of the chapters on my live thoughts. And yeah, so I'm going to get started on this pretty soon. I was going to start this like immediately after this clip, but I think I need to write out a blog post for work before I do that, or at least get it started, so I may end up doing that before I start reading Persuasion. But yes, I will be starting that, and I will let you know my thoughts. Hey guys, so I just reached chapter 9 of Persuasion, and I am enjoying it more now than I was earlier on. I didn't come on here to share thoughts until now because I honestly was, I don't want to say bored, and to be fair, I was kind of reading it in between some family things going on, family activities going on, and conversations and things. So it was a little hard for me to like really dig in and focus. And then today I've just been kind of tired and my anxiety's been a little bit high this morning. So that kind of does impact my enjoyment. So I'm trying to come at this in a more, I don't know, in a way where I'm thinking more about the story than about my own, how I'm just feeling in general. So I think I've finally gotten to the point where I can say I do think it's interesting. I'm a little concerned about the length of it, I will be honest. I think it's possible for this to end up being wonderful even despite the length, but I just worry that the development of the romance will not be what I would want from it. We'll have to see. Again, I'm not even quite halfway through, so I don't feel like it's fair to totally base on what's happening so far, but it did take a while to get to the point where the romantic interest came in, which in a book this short was a little concerning. I also feel like I'm just now really getting to know Anne Elliot a little bit, and honestly, she reminds me a lot of Fanny Price in many, many ways, which I find interesting because I know a lot of people really love this book and don't love Mansfield Park as much, so I'm curious to see how her development continues. Yeah, considering that she just seems very similar to Fanny Price in a lot of ways. I think part of my frustration with this so far is that I'm getting closer and closer to halfway through, and yet I feel like there's been so much more time spent on the other characters rather than on Anne. And Mansfield Park is pretty similar to that, although I do feel like we get a lot more about Fanny Price earlier on than in this, within the first few chapters. But I feel like with Mansfield Park, I went into it knowing that it kind of, like, that Fanny is kind of a quiet background character, but this, nobody says that. So I feel like I'm sure we're going to get to know her a lot better as time goes on. She's going to become a lot more centralized. I can already see that happening, but it did take a few chapters for it to really happen that way. I felt like for a long time it was more focused on her family, her father, her sisters, her godmother, and other characters, and so I just don't feel like I'm really that connected with Anne Elliot yet, but I'm seeing that slightly change, so hopefully it will continue on in a better light, and hopefully also I can put myself in a better, happier mood to be able to enjoy this a little bit better than I am so far. All that being said, again, I do have hope based on where it's at now, where I just got to, that the development's going to start to happen a little bit more. Again, most other books, the length of time it took to really start getting into the main character and the main plot line wouldn't bother me. It's just the fact that this is so short that made me worry about the fact that it wasn't really developing as fast as I would want it to for a book this short. So yeah, anyway, we'll see how it goes. I have yet to message Katya. I mean, the other day I did tell her that I was going to start it early, but other than that, I haven't shared thoughts. Again, similar to why I haven't vlogged anything up until this point is because I just needed a little more time to process and see how I feel about it. And I feel like even now I don't really know what to say to Katya. I might just tell her what point I'm at since I am reading a little bit ahead so that she knows. But I feel like my biggest feeling right now is just being kind of bored for a lot of it and then finally now getting a little bit more intrigued. We'll see how things continue on. Anyway, I will update you probably tomorrow when I read a few more chapters. I should be able to reach the halfway point tomorrow, at least that's the plan. So we'll see where I'm at that point. Hey guys, so it is actually the same day and I did reach volume 2 of Persuasion. I kind of surprised myself by coming home and feeling really in the mood to read this. So I ended up finishing part 1. I gotta message Katya and tell her that even though we were just supposed to start today, I finished half of it already. So anyway, I'm really liking it better than I was before. It's definitely looking up. I really like Captain Benwick, is that his name? He's such a sweetheart, so I hope for the best things for him. Very curious about this Mr. Elliot, who has come into the picture a little bit and how he's going to continue to play a role. I do feel like I need a little bit more development of the two main characters before I can really love them. I mean, they're great, and I feel like Anne is gaining more and more of my affection. I do feel like she's kind of a good mix of both Fanny Price and who's the other one? Eleanor from Sense and Sensibility. I feel like she's a very good combination of those two characters, which is interesting. I find I really enjoy in other Jane Austen works the subplots a little bit more, and I feel like this has less of that, which I think is partly why the beginning felt a little slow and difficult for me to get into, because I'm used to having a little bit more character development of a lot more characters than what I got in this. I don't know, or maybe just the way it was done in this just didn't grip me right away. But whatever the case, I'm enjoying it pretty well now, and we will see how the second half goes. I do have higher hopes for the second half after how the first half ended, so we will see how it goes. So anyway, those are my thoughts, and I will check in with you tomorrow once I get through a few more chapters. Hey guys, so I just reached the end of chapter 8 in Persuasion of part 2, so I only have 4 chapters left, and still going well. I'm really enjoying it. Definitely a lot better than the first part, which is good. I really like Anne a lot. I've liked some of the shocking plot twists that have gone on in the second part. I will say I mean, we'll see how the last 4 chapters go, but I feel like it's too short for me. Like, I just feel like I need a little bit more development, both of the plot and of the characters. I feel like there's not really any side characters that really draw my attention besides Captain Benwick, who I already mentioned, and I'm not sure how much more he's going to be in the book at this point. I do like the Crofts just because I do appreciate a good marriage being shown in Jane Austen, because that doesn't always happen. But I really just don't feel like I know Captain Wentworth at all. I feel like I'm getting to know him better, but he just still seems like just this guy she liked a long time ago who's come back, and that's all I really feel like I know about him. Like, I just don't see much of his personality. Again, seeing it a little bit more, and maybe these last 4 chapters will bring that to light a little bit more. But I don't know, just like his descriptions and what I've seen from him have just limited my ability to really get to know him much. I almost feel like what could have made this book a lot better for me is if it had a few chapters to start off with where it explored their romance, where it explored their original romance between Anne and Captain Wentworth, because at least then I could feel it a little bit more. I can understand why she didn't do that. I kind of wish that was in Sense and Sensibility as well with Eleanor, but I don't know. It's just too short. It's just too short. Again, I'll see how the last 4 chapters go, and I'm definitely enjoying my time. Like, it's not a bad time. I just, compared to some of her other works that are longer, I just prefer them. I will say I think I like this better than Mansfield Park or Northanger Abbey, so it's definitely like more in the middle on my rankings, but I do think Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, and Emma, all 3 will beat this out. Again, gotta see how the last 4 chapters go. They might surprise me, but so far that's how I feel. Some other feelings I guess I am having about the characters. I hate Anne's family. They're just awful. I mean, they're supposed to be awful, but They really are awful. I'm very curious to see who Mr. Elliot ends up being, like what he ends up doing. He's definitely kind of the main interest for me right now besides the romance itself, so that's kind of fun and we'll see how that goes. But other than that, I'm gonna try to finish this off. If I have any thoughts before the end, I will come on and record them. But I may just kind of wrap it up at the end, so we'll see how these last 4 chapters go. I think it's about like 50 to 60 pages left, so let's see how it goes. Hi guys, sorry you're not getting very many different types of backgrounds for this vlog, and also this clip might have a little bit of a glare. I'm gonna try adjusting it to make the glare a little less on my glasses. Yeah, that did practically nothing, but oh well, we'll just use this. Sorry about my unmade bed, but anyway, I did finish Persuasion last night, and so I wanted to wrap up my thoughts on this. I ended up giving it about 4 out of 5 stars. It was actually an interesting rating experience for me, just because most of the time I feel pretty good about what I rate things. But I discovered on this rating that I think sometimes I rate more based on plot, even though I prefer based a little bit more on characters. Prefer books, that is, a little bit more but based on characters. And I realized that because I liked this better than Mansfield Park. I would put it higher than Mansfield Park. But for some reason, I felt tempted to give this a 3 stars when I gave Mansfield Park a 4 stars. And yet I still felt good about that rating for Mansfield Park. So I ended up just giving this a 4 stars because I'm like, I mean, I like this better than Mansfield Park. So it's strange that I would think of this more as a 3-star read and Mansfield Park more as a 4-star read when I liked this better. And I realized, I think it's because I feel like Mansfield Park has a more fully developed plot and a little bit more interesting plot in my opinion. But I feel like I enjoyed the characters more in this one, and I think honestly like the plot in this wasn't bad. It just wasn't as fully developed as her longer books because she has more time in longer books obviously to develop the plot. And so I feel like this was just a little lacking in that area. I did love the ending as far as like the last few chapters that I had not read yet. When I last updated you, I did really like the ending, Captain Wentworth's letter. I had heard it before, but within context it just made it even better. It was so sweet, so cute. I did feel like the ending was a little rushed, and I find this a lot with Jane Austen's novels. I feel like, you know, in the last chapter, she just kind of ties up all the loose ends within a few pages, just kind of describes what ended up happening, and I feel like sometimes that's a little disappointing to me, and I felt like that was kind of the case with this. I also felt very strange about the character of Mrs. Smith. I just really felt like she was just there as a convenience. She wasn't really there to do anything beyond, you know, give a good reason why Mr. Elliot should get out of the picture. And I just felt very disappointed with that. I just felt like she could have created a lot more intrigue and had her own little subplot a little bit more, but I feel like Jane Austen tried to give her a little bit more of a subplot with like her financial situation, but I didn't really feel like it came to fruition. It literally felt like she was just plopped in there just to represent this person who brings in new information about one of the characters. I also felt like, as far as Jane Austen's like side characters go, the ones in this weren't bad, but I just didn't feel like they were as developed as I would have liked them to. I also was honestly disappointed with Captain Benwick's ending. Like I thought, he didn't really show up the rest of the book after part 1, and I was really disappointed in that. I would have liked to see him a little bit more with Louisa. And again, going back to Captain Wentworth, he should have been in the book more. Like I just really didn't feel much for him at all. Like I felt like he was in it so little that all he was to me was someone she used to care for, who comes back and, you know, at first is angry with her and then is in love with her later again. And it just ended up feeling a little underdeveloped. Again, it just felt very underdeveloped. I will say I did really like Anne Elliot as a main character. She grew on me a lot as the story went on. I find her family, even though I really don't like them, I found them very interesting. But yeah, I just felt like a lot of the character development for a lot of the side characters and the male love interests were just very lacking, and that's really what brought down my enjoyment. That being said, I mean, I flew through it within a few days. I still really liked it. It's still Jane Austen. The writing is still impeccable, and even though it is so short, I did feel like there was a decent amount of character development in it for how long it is. I just, again, felt like I would have liked it better if they were further developed. And I find, honestly, my top 3 favorite Jane Austen novels are all mostly her longer ones besides Mansfield Park. And I think that's just telling as to what I want out of the stories that I don't feel like the shorter works are able to do for me. That all being said, I could tell that this was definitely a more mature version of Jane Austen's writing. You could tell she was really thinking a lot deeper about her situation in life that I feel like she really does in other works, I guess. Not that she doesn't in the other books, but I did feel like she was at a point in life where there was a lot of introspection happening when she wrote this, and you know, she's discussing an older heroine who is more mature, she discusses how she's more aware of what actually will make her happy at that point, that the time between her first being engaged or almost engaged to Captain Wentworth to now has helped her grow as a person and really become someone who knows exactly what she's looking for. And it is Captain Wentworth, but she even argues that like it was probably in some ways a good thing that she was able to get that time to be able to really understand herself before she got married. And same for him, that he was able to get his status, get his independence financially, be able to really save up and earn a living and earn status in society before he married her, and how that was beneficial. I also found it interesting that she brought up a lot more about the situation of women at this time, of just, you know, having to just kind of stay about the house and not having as much to do. And she does bring that up in other books, but I feel like she very seriously focuses on that in this book, especially towards the end, in a way that I found really interesting. So yeah, basically I enjoyed a lot about it, and I think on further rereads I'll probably continue to grow in my admiration for this book. I feel like with all of Jane Austen's work, the more experience I get with them between adaptations and then rereading them, the more I appreciate things about them, and so I feel like that will definitely be the case with this. But I do think it was underdeveloped. I think I would have liked a lot more to the story than what I got. I would have liked a lot more character development for certain characters than what I got. And honestly, I just feel like the plot of this story was a little less interesting than some of the others. I don't know. I felt like it didn't feel quite as cohesive. Maybe that's what it is. This one just felt like it was very focused on the romance between Anne and Captain Wentworth, and that's what I was expecting. And yet there's all these other little subplots that like kind of lead on the romance, but they all feel a little just kind of like something to happen in order to get these two back together, as opposed to like these other people really living their own lives, if that makes sense. Like, it just felt a little more like conveniences to move the romance along, whereas like in Pride and Prejudice we have experiences with like Jane and Mr. Bingley where they have their own romance going on, and so there are things that happen with them that do push Elizabeth and Darcy together, but you also feel like they're having their own life, and you're able to see that development a little bit more. Same with Lydia and Wickham. Again, those things push Darcy and Elizabeth together, but you're able to see how those characters are their own characters and have their own stories. Whereas in this, I mean, yeah, there's like the Captain Benwick and Louisa that come together, but you're not really able to see any development with them. Again, it just feels like a convenience to make it easier for Wentworth and Anne to end up together, And then there's, again, Mrs. Smith, who's there, and yeah, she kind of has her own life, but it really feels like she's just there to push Captain Wentworth and Anne together. Same with Mr. Elliot. He just seems to be there to just kind of cause another hindrance that ends up being fixed and moving on. Like, you just don't see as much development with those other characters and stories, to the point where obviously they're pushing the main romance along, but also they have their own lives. I don't know if that makes sense. I feel like maybe it does, especially with that comparison to Pride and Prejudice. Anyway, so yeah, all that stuff just made this feel a little flat. But I also feel like the point of this book was more for Jane Austen to share her own introspections and thoughts, as opposed to telling a fully developed story like some of her other books. I could be wrong about that, but that's the feeling I got. Like, I felt like the writing in this was really interesting. I felt like the exploration of thoughts and feelings within Anne was very interesting, and I felt like all of that added up to more Jane Austen just kind of, yeah, thinking about her own life, thinking about her own experience, and really just kind of sharing those thoughts with the world in a story format that's a little more entertaining. And so I feel like that's part of what makes this book feel so much more serious, is because the story feels more focused on her inner thoughts and her inner turmoil, as opposed to an actual like plot events that are going on, which I liked, but personal preference, I prefer a little bit more plot and character development of other characters besides the main character than what I got in this, despite the fact that I did respect what it did have to offer. So anyway, that's a long, rambly discussion of my final thoughts on Persuasion. Glad I read it, excited to read it in the future again. I can see a lot of value in it, and I hope as I continue to read it that I'll continue to see and gain respect for it. And maybe someday, who knows? You never know on rereads which one will end up kind of being a favorite. I feel like sometimes with certain authors, you'll read some of their books and the first read through they're good, but you don't know, and then as time goes on and you continue to think about it or reread it, you discover that it actually is so much more up your alley than you thought it was, or maybe just at a different time of life it hits you in a different way. So it's definitely one that I'm glad I read. It's not like my least favorite Jane Austen or anything like that. So yeah, but I'm not going to discuss any more my rankings on Jane Austen, because that is a video that will be coming up very soon, probably in the next week or so after you see this. So anyway, read Persuasion, loved it. I need to message Katya. Actually, I messaged her this morning. She hasn't been feeling well, so she actually just barely started her reread. So we're a little off of each other because I just finished it and she just barely started. But hopefully we'll still be able to have a good conversation. That's the most important part of a buddy read. And luckily, again, it's her reread, so I could still just share my thoughts as I was reading. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let me know down below your thoughts on Persuasion. Do you agree with my thoughts? Do you disagree with them? Feel free to tell me in the comments. Of course, always be respectful to everyone in the comments, not just me, but to everyone. Also, let me know what your favorite Jane Austen novel is, as I would love to know. I mean, in my ranking, I'll probably ask that again. But you know, tell me again and again, because I'm sure I'll forget, and I'm always interested to hear why people like certain books by Jane Austen and why maybe others don't hit them the same, because I feel like there's a lot of varying opinions when it comes to Jane Austen novels. So very curious to hear what you have to say. Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!